Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahilladzi khalaqal kainat wa tufaddilu alaina bijuhdihi wa rahmat. Huwallazi arsala rasulahu bil huda wal bayanat. Amma ba'd. The Honorable Director of State Islamic University Sultan Maulana Hasanuddin Banten, Profesor Dr. Wawan Wahyudin MPD. The Honorable the Dean of Dakwah Fakulty, Dr. Endad Musaddad MA. The Honorable all the Vice Dean of Dakwah Fakulty. The Honorable LP2M of State Islamic University Sultan Maulana Hasanuddin Banten. The Honorable, the speakers for this international seminar, Professor Bart Barendrecht as a Professor of Anthropology of Digital Diversity, Leiden University, and Professor Gary Arband as a Professor of Islamic Studies, the University of Wales Trinity Science David, and all of the audience. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this international seminar on Islamic Digital Humanities. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an existing lineup of seasons planned for today. The first is opening, the second is speech from the speaker, and the last is closing. So, for open our international seminar, I welcoming Rector of State Islamic University Sultan Maulana Hasanuddin Banten, for Professor Dr. Wawan Wahyudin MPD to open this seminar.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala amma ba'du. Puji syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Alhamdulillah pagi ini kita bisa bersilaturahmi. We thank to our God Allah has given us comfortable till we can meet together this morning. Salawat and salam just for Allah's Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, for his followers and for his families and all followers from now until the hereafter. The Excellency Mr. Bart Barendrecht, thank you for your coming. We give applause for him. Professor of Anthropology of Digital Diversity, Leiden University. Oh, luar biasa. Thank you very much. I'm very glad to meet you, and I'm very proud because he can speak Sunda. Yeah. He said to me that he can speak Sunda, saltik. Okay, the honorable guest, Mr. Gary Arband. Thank you. Yeah. He is as a professor of Islamic Studies, lembaga yang berbasis keislaman menjaga keimanan. Saya lagi menyisir siapa yang terjebak judi online or offline. Antara lain dengan edaran yang sudah kami sebarkan. Ini mandatori Gusti Allah, Rasul dan Gusmen. So I hope you to pay attention please for our fight untuk menjaga keimanan kita. The second tagline is intellectuality. So I'm very happy for you coming to improve our institution. Saya sangat bangga karena tagline kedua kita adalah intellectuality. Kita harus berani menghadirkan lintas budaya, lintas sosial, lintas agama sekalipun. Karena kampus ini adalah milik dunia, kampus ini milik negara, dan kampus ini harus go internasional. And the third, professionality. Tagline ketiga, profesional. Saya minta kegiatan ini, Pak Masykur, Pak Dekan, Pak Wadek, diadministrasikan secara baik-baik karena ini berdampak pada akreditasi. Ya, dari mulai undangannya, kemudian acaranya, agendanya. Bahkan kita ingin ke depan digital kita, Muslim digital kita menjadi the best in the world, insya Allah. Saya berharap nanti ya digital yang kita miliki ini atas bimbingan beliau-beliau ini kita terus bisa memperbaiki dan memperbaiki, so be the best in the next time for our institution, insyaallah. That's what I say in front of you all. Itu saja amanat singkat saya, sebab saya sudah ditunggu untuk praktek BIMSIK PAI. Saya harus datang, saya bilang, karena saya ingin ngejar pemberian wali kota hibah yang nanti juga kembali ke dakwah. Tapi saya harus tunjukkan dulu bahwa kita mampu menyelenggarakan. Sementara ini PAI, FTK di mana, di Cikole, Pandeglang. Jadi saya udah ditunggu lagi, gak apa-apa. Pagi hari saya habis nganter anak saya lamaran, ya saya sehat, sini lagi saya balik lagi, karena ini adalah urusan institusi. Yang penting sehat kita semua. Thank you for your attention, and by reciting Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I open this seminar. May God Allah bless us in our life and our life. Thank you. Wallahul muwaffiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Jaga kekompakan, jangan ada konflik. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For the next agenda is giving souvenirs and take a picture of the moment. So please, for the committee, take your time. Giving applause. Okay. Maybe all of the committee take a picture. Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. So please, we can take a picture of the moment. Please stand up. Ladies and gentlemen, so now we're going to the main agenda. For beginning the agenda, a speech from the speaker. So I hand over to the moderator, to Dr. Ade Jaya Suryadipurna. Please take your time. Give it a loud speech.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. A few weeks ago, I distributed a flyer about an international seminar, and here is the seminar. We only have two distinguished professors. The first one is Professor Bar. He is Professor of Anthropology, Digital Diversity from Leiden University. As maybe most of you already know that he speaks Sudanese, so please don't say something bad about him. And then, the second one is Professor Gary. He is Professor of Islamic Studies from the University of Wales. Both of them are distinguished professors on digital humanities. And Professor Bart will be focusing on digital ethnography. Sorry, have to look at the algorithms. Actually, it is the title of his latest book. To make our time efficient, I would like to invite who will be the first speaker? You or I shall go? Okay, okay. I invite Professor Bart to present his slides, maybe for around 40 to 50 minutes, as you wish. Yeah.
Don't be short if it's too long.
Okay, good. And then we'll be followed by the second speakers, Professor Gedi, and then we will have a discussion, maybe until
12. Is that okay? Okay, good. And then the floor is yours. Okay.
I'm going to use this mic.
Okay.
Siapkan dulu. Yep. Good morning everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hope you're... Semuanya sehat hari ini? Syukur, syukur. Alhamdulillah. Let me say a few words as an introduction. I'm going to talk English, very slow. I will mix it with some Indonesia. If you have any questions, bahasa Inggris boleh, bahasa Indonesia boleh juga. Terserah kan? If there's something unclear, just raise your hand. But if you have questions, please hold on to them till the very end. I'm Bart Barendrecht. I hope you can hear me. Is this good enough in the room? Yeah. I'm an anthropologist, a cultural anthropologist. And that's maybe good to say first. I'm not trained in Islamic studies, but very much an anthropologist working on religion, and the anthropology of Islam. So keep that in mind. Like sometimes I will look more at culture than theology, but that's okay. Mas Adi has asked me to say a little bit on digital ethnography today. So that's what I'm mostly going to talk about, and I will explain what it is. Don't worry. Maybe a little bit about where I'm coming from. As an anthropologist, I've always been very much interested in technology. I've been working on popular music, cassettes, records, piring hitam, yang dari zaman dulunya juga sampai sekarangnya, video CD-nya, sampai streaming media, so different formats. And I'm always very interested in how people make sense of new technologies, especially if they are new. I've been mostly looking at Southeast Asian Muslims and how they are making sense of new technologies. That's better, I think, not? Yeah. So in the past I've, for example, been working in a project on popular music, writing about music nasyid, and how people in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia have been working on nasyid music, using different technologies and making sense of that. And I felt like, hey, there's something happening there. Like every time a new technology is introduced, there's this short window that people are bingung. They're trying to make sense. Apa ini akan terjadi dengan teknologi baru ini? I've moved on. I've not only studied music, I've also worked on HP, mobile phones, and how Indonesian people have been working with mobile phones, which kind of languages they have been using. Bahasa Indonesia, bahasa Sunda, maybe bahasa Korea, karena kerennya. And lately, for the last few years, I've been more interested in both social media, that's us, but also newer technologies. Artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, even nanotechnology. What happens with those technologies in the hands of religious people? How are they dealing with ethical matters of these technologies? As you may notice, like there's this blue book on the screen. That's very much the book that I'm giving as a form of departure. A textbook we did on audio and digital anthropology, and especially how to do this practically. And so this will be a own your technologies, to appropriate technologies, to make those technologies work. So that's where I'm starting from. Again, Annie has asked me, can you say something about digital technology? How do you work on those new technologies? I guess that not all of you are anthropologists and don't know probably what ethnography is, but I explain in a minute. Why this topic and why digital ethnography? It's a very easy explanation for that. I know that a lot of people are not talking so much about digital ethnography until COVID-19 happened. And we were all in lockdown, we were doing Zoom, and if you recognize the picture on the screen, and we were all doing that education. But a lot of people are also wondering, now we can't do research anymore, now we can't talk to people, we can't do interviews. Kita masih seorang ibunya digital technology. Fieldwork tetapi online. Kita masih tetap bisa mencari orang tapi lewat kameranya, lewat Zoom-nya, lewat Microsoft-nya team. And so that's what we're very much talking about. Fieldwork that moves online. What was interesting, suddenly everyone was talking about digital technology. And no one had ever brought to us to say, hey, what can you do seminars? And suddenly everyone doing everywhere seminars on digital technology because people needed it during COVID-19. There were new handbooks, there were new things shared online. And people often forgot that digital technology has been around for quite a while already. People, digital technology bukan satu fenomena yang baru. Offline saja. Now, what is digital ethnography? Let's define that first. I have here a definition from the blue book that I showed you. It's a very flexible method. It's something which is adapted also to study online technologies, digital technologies, but at the same time you can't study these things only online. Kalau betul-betul ingin paham ya, kenapa orang memakai Facebook atau TikTok atau Insta, apa yang terjadi di ChatGPT, kita harus juga bertemu dengan orang secara offline. Kalau tidak, kita tidak akan pahami. And so that's the main point of departure. If you study digital things, you need to move offline as well. I think that's the difference between me as an anthropologist and people that probably are doing media or communication studies. That can focus on the online text and do something with that. We need to look at the people who are working with those media to understand what is going on. Why are they using certain media, for example? And just to give you an example, I told you I was working on nasyid, musik nasyid. Ini ada beberapa gambarnya dari Malaysia. Ada satu grup yang saya selama beberapa tahun ikuti, UNIC. It's a very famous nasyid group. I first met these people offline. I went to concerts, went to their studios, talked to them, only then start following them online. If I wouldn't have done that, you can't make sense. And so you still have to talk to people offline to get the whole picture, I would say. So what is digital ethnography? There's a definition here. It's firstly about memahami bagaimana integrasinya itu alat-alat technical, digital, diintegrate dalam sehari-harian, in everyday life. And we like to understand not just like what is being used or what is being told through TikTok or Instagram, but why are people using that? What's the need for using that? We like to study them and how they are being used, integrated in common practices. For example, people go night haji. Why are they still using TikTok if they are on haji? With whom are they using that? There's a lot of ethical questions. Can they do that, or is it very hedonistic to post all sorts of videos if you're on the hajj? And that's the kind of discussions we as anthropologists are very much interested in. We do that both online and offline, and what is good to say, it's very much a follow-up, an extension of traditional field work that anthropologists, but also other people have been doing for the last 150 years. And there's very little that is new here. That is good to point out, I think. So this is what my predecessors look like. This is a picture of an anthropologist called Malinowski. I think Gary recognizes this picture. It's a very colonial picture, as you may recognize. This white man sitting next to a couple of native people, pretending to be the authority, translating other people's cultures to the Western world. But in fact, the same model, I would say a little bit less colonial, is still being used today by anthropologists. And we like to do field work. We spend some time with people. We deeply hang out, as we say. We like deep hanging out. And we talk to people. Sometimes selalunya orang yang bilang, hey, Bart, kapan ya akan kerja? Itu nggak kelihatan itu orang antropolog sedang kerja. Dan memang kita sedang blending in, seperti orang di tempatnya. Dan kita kadang-kadang ya nulis sesuatu, tapi nggak pernah kelihatan kayak kita memang serius atau kerja. Tapi itu field work. We hang out with people. We try to become like them. And then we translate. Then we write it all up. Dan itu semuanya etnografi. Kita pergi ke satu tempat, menjadi seperti orang yang setempatnya, mungkin tinggal di situ 1 tahun, 2 tahunnya, terus pulangnya, nanti ditulisnya semuanya. Itu seperti gampang sekali, tapi cukup susah. Karena kalau kita lama di tempatnya, sering ada orang yang bilang itu going native. Menjadi seperti orang itu. Nanti pulangnya orang sananya bingung, kok ini Bartnya kayak orang Sunda, makannya lelap aja dan ubi, rokoknya kretek mungkin, itu terlalu native nanti. So I have to come back, it takes some time, and I write it up. So etnografi, itu satu istilahnya itu dipakai untuk prosesnya turun ke lapangan, maupun untuk prosesnya nulisnya nanti. Kalau buku itu nanti disebutnya etnografi tentang sesuatu. So it's both the fieldwork and the written report. Nah, saya sudah bilang sebenarnya terlalu baru juga. Kalau digital ethnography dan etnografi semacam ini, fieldwork yang dulu, ada banyak yang sama. Ada yang beda juga, tapi ada banyak yang sama. Kita tetapnya kalau digital ethnography coba ini untuk satu periode yang cukup lama, for a long period. Kita coba mendekati orang, sustained proximity. Ini kita coba secara mendekati orang, tapi untuk ya mungkin 1 bulan, 2 bulan, 3 bulan, itu terus diusahakan. We use this concept called participant observation. Ada yang pernah dengar istilah? You ever heard about participant observation atau itu baru? Baru. Kalau participant observation, ada?
No, he is from Department of History.
Oh ya.
So he doesn't know.
Kalau orang sejarawan biasanya itu arsif. Kalau kita participant observation, berarti kita participate. Misalnya kalau saya nulis tentang budaya UIN di Banten, berarti saya harus menjadi mahasiswa atau harus menjadi dosennya di sini untuk participate supaya paham. Nah, pertama-tamanya ini ada banyak pertanyaan yang bodoh karena saya belum paham. Saya akan tanya, wah ini gimana? How do I have to do this? And that's what is called apprenticeship. Saya menjadi satu muridnya dan saya sengaja itu suka salahnya supaya selama-lamanya saya akan pahami. And so we become a student in somebody else's life, try to learn about them. So hopefully we get to understand that. And that's the same in this kind of field work that Malinowski did, as it is now online. I'm going on Facebook, masuk satu grup, nggak paham apa yang terjadi di situ. Kau bikin satu post dulu, saya belum paham, waduh satu post, mau masukin itu video atau gambarnya bagaimana. Nah semua harus dipelajari, saya jadi muridnya, apprenticeship, supaya lama-lamanya saya paham, oh ini Facebookers group. Sama TikTok, saya sama sekali nggak paham itu, karena udah jadul itu orangnya. Tapi saya suka belajar dengan anak saya, dengan teman-teman dia, pura-puranya bodoh, lama-lamanya belajar. Nah itu sama. Offline, online. We anthropologists don't have a lot of tools. Kita nggak punya alat banyak, hanya badan ini, our body. For example, if I go on field work like Malinowski, I go somewhere and I eat the things that people eat. I talk about the same things, hopefully, but I use my body as a tool. It's the same actually if I go online. Like I use to take, I'm going to make videos, like me is the only thing I bring. I don't have more in that sense. I don't have a lab, I don't have all other things. And I'm asking stupid questions all of the time. Jangan ini ada sesuatu yang dianggapnya memang biasa-biasa saja, kita selalu kepingin tanya pertanyaan yang agak bodohnya sedikit. Karena kepingin paham. Now that's all the same. Itu traditional fieldwork, digital fieldwork, we do similar things. There's also new challenges, ada juga yang barunya. Kalau kita memang move online, digital ethnography daripada etnografi yang dulunya, yang zaman dulunya, apa sih itu? Kita bilang fieldwork, tapi fieldnya di mana? Kalau kita misalnya memperdalami TikTok atau Facebook, di mana lapangannya? Di mana mulainya, di mana berhentinya? Itu susah sekali. And we can't define anymore. And there's this other problem that you never leave the field. Kita tidak pernah akan pulang, karena walaupun saya di sini memang penelitian tentang TikTok atau Insta, nanti sampai di Amsterdam, masih ada yang balas WhatsApp saya, masih ada yang kirim TikTok. Berarti lapangan itu ikut saya. I think that's a big difference. And that the field is no longer defined, but very fluid, you could say. Establishing rapport, trust, kepercayaan. Supaya orang percaya kita, memahami kita, itu lebih susah sebenarnya. Kalau saya tinggal di kampungnya, di sini, orang bisa lihat saya. Dan itu anak, ada orang bule yang tinggi. Tapi lama-lamanya mudah-mudahan mereka percaya pada saya. Tapi kalau online, ya seenak aja saya bisa bilang, oh saya Bart, saya orang hitam atau orang Sunda atau saya kucingnya. Nggak ada yang lihat itu kan. So it's more difficult to gain trust from people, you could say. A new thing is also that our studies have become very multi-sided, as anthropologists say. Kita bukan hanya kerja di satu lokasi. Tapi kalau saya lewat Instagram, sekarangnya di Banten, besoknya di Seoul, mungkin besoknya di Amsterdam lagi, tergantung teman kita. So we move to a lot of different places, you could say. And there's a lot of questions about ethics. Masalah etika. Misalnya apa yang boleh disimpan, data siapa. Misalnya saya ini bertemannya di Facebook dengan Mas Adi. Terus dia punya fotonya istri dia yang lucu. Saya pikir, waduh, di copy, terus nanti dimasukin ke penelitian saya. Ya enak aja kalau saya nggak minta izin kan dengan Mas Adi. If you don't ask for permission, these things tend to become very difficult in the digital age. And we all know, no? It's very difficult because you think, it's Facebook or it's Instagram. Sudah publik kan, nggak apa-apa. But if we don't ask, that's an issue. And the data we collect. I'm a digital ethnographer. I don't have just like one hard disk with data, but now I'm also collecting TikTok videos. I'm collecting YouTube videos. And so before you know, it's not just gigabytes, but it's petabytes, it's whatever bytes, it's super big. At the Universitas Leiden suka komplain, kok ini batnya terlalu banyak data, disimpannya di mana, mahal itu. And so those are new discussions, you could say. Now, a little bit about the historical development of digital ethnography, because I think that is good to understand. And I think probably the only person in the room that can follow me here is Gary, because we are coming from the same point. We have worked on some of these very old media. And there was a time digital ethnographers, digital anthropologists used to study bulletin boards, mailing list. Ada yang di sini yang pernah ini ikut tuh Yahoo mailing list masih atau udah? Oh masih ada bapak-bapak saya lihat yang ingat kan? Tapi itu zaman dulu. Waktu kita digital ethnographers pada saat itu gampang sekali karena kita hanya ke internetnya, bacanya itu mailing list, udah ada beberapa komentar, ada yang ikut diskusi, udah kita nulis. We just follow the discussions online. Now these things have become more and more complex. People are not just on a mailing list, they're also on TikTok, Insta, Telegram, Signal, you name it, and all at the same time. So it's far more difficult to follow these people, I would say. And so there's no more text-based online communities, there's also gaming environments, there's virtual worlds, there is, you name it, people are using video, there's virtual meetings. And that has become much more difficult to study. And some of you will recognize this picture of the dog using internet, ada anjing yang memakai internet. In 1993, it very much looked like this. One dog saying to the other like, haha, nggak ada yang tahu saya sebenarnya anjing. Karena saya lagi main internet, saya bisa pura-pura, siapa saja kan itu. Tapi that was in the 1990s. Only a few years later, 2013, 10 years ago already, kita memang bingung karena semuanya tahu apa yang terjadi, semuanya monitor kita, nggak ada privasinya lagi. If you're on the internet, semuanya tahu ini anjingnya, you're a dog, you can't hide, people will find out. And so in that sense, times have very much changed and digital ethnographers need to reckon with that, you could say. I also have to say, anthropologists were very late to join ethnography online. It were first psychologists, communication specialists, anthropologists were much later, and I think we have been doing it in different ways as well. Anthropologists have been very keen on studying online communities, Second Life, virtual communities. Kita memang fokusnya terhadap hubungan sosial itu. Itu beda dengan orang psikolog yang sering lihat itu apa yang terjadi dengan anak muda yang suka ini tercantum itu social media atau tercantum gamingnya online. We are more interested in what is happening with social relations. That's too quick. What is also good, because a lot of you are focusing on Islamic studies and the digital. Di dunia Islam, dunia digital Islam itu berubahnya juga itu. Ada fenomena seperti curhat. Masih ingat curhat? Nah itu sangat ini 2000-an kan itu. Waktu orangnya masih suka Facebooking, kalau kita punya masalah kita curhat dengan teman. We poured out our hearts and we could complain together or share our emotions. That's not a thing which is very popular anymore. We have moved from curhat, as my friend Martin Slama would say, to ngecharge hati. We very much use social media to recharge. We are looking for an online imam, we are looking at influencers who help us recharge our energy. If we have problems, we look at new influential people who do so as well. Ada sesuatu yang penting juga. If we study online phenomena, digital tools now, I think what really has changed is that we are bringing a lot of these online media with us. Kalau satu alat yang digital itu dulu kita lewat laptop atau desktopnya. Kalau sekarang ada smartwatch, ada handphone, berarti itu teman-teman kita selalunya di bawahnya. Nggak bisa ditinggal di rumah, itu selalu ada keluarga kita di sini. Wherever we go, we bring the digital world with us. We wear it through watches or phones, or maybe in a short time we inject ourselves with chips, who knows. It's also very much embedded in whatever we do. If you go do sports, we look how many langkah kita udah hari ini misalnya. How many kilometers we have run. If you're going to eat, we take pictures of our food. Very common, I think we all do. And so it has been very much embedded in all the things we are doing. And that's a big difference, I would say, from the very early digital tools. What am I doing here? I'm going too fast with the slides. Yeah, sini. And so Kristin Hein, who is a fellow digital anthropologist, would say today the internet, digital tools are embedded, embodied, and very everyday. Mereka beradanya di apa yang kita bisa kerjakan, embedded, embodied, di badan kitanya, sebagai jam tangan atau HP-nya, dan everyday, sehari-harian. Sering itu internet nggak dipertanyakan lagi, karena udah dianggap begitu biasa, nggak dipermasalahkannya lagi. It's already so everyday. And that's a big difference, I would say. How do you study all these things? Bagaimana memang kita bisa memahami itu semuanya? Kalau orang antropolog terus terang kadang-kadangnya bingung. Kita harus sangat fleksibel. Satu istilah yang dipakai adalah pop-up methodology. Kita tidak punya metodologi yang tetap, tapi apa saja yang bisa dipakai, yang pop-up, kita coba memakainya. And so it's very flexible, you can say. And so we still do participant observation online. We follow people, we follow their discussions. If there's a scandal, we like to follow as well. And we follow certain casus, if that's happening. But you can't no longer stay just on one platform. En kalau kita mau memahami satu diskusi, nggak bisa kita di satu tempat saja, tapi ikut orang, ikut diskusi. Dari Facebook ke Insta, ke TikTok, offline-nya, online-nya lagi. Berarti tetap kita ikut orang. Kita nggak bisa memahami kalau kita hanya memperdalami Facebook saja. Itu tidak cukup lagi. We like to use different methods and we like to use the concept of triangulation. Ada yang pernah dengar istilahnya triangulasi? Belum pernah mungkin kan? Kalau triangulasi berarti jangan hanya satu metode saja, tapi beberapa metode supaya kita betul-betul paham. Jangan kita hanya memang discourse analysis, baca satu teks, tapi sekaligus interview dengan orang yang nulis teksnya. Itu dua metode yang beda, tapi coba kita lihat itu datanya nanti sama atau tidak. Ada juga metode lain. Saya tadi bilang itu kita suka blend in, immerse, participant observation. Kalau kepingin tahu ada satu studi dari Bluto yang nulis tentang fashion blogging. Orang influencer yang suka menjual pakaian online. Think of Dian Pelangi, think of the hijabers, that kind of format. It's very nice, of course, if you're going to do such a thing, to become like a fashion blogger. Kalau betul-betul ingin pahami itu fashion blogger, menjadi satu fashion blogger. Kalau mau ikut itu omongannya hijabers online, sebaiknya kita jadi hijaber sendirinya, supaya betul-betul paham ya. Now that's a challenge. That's what digital ethnography asks from you, more or less. Now, there's two concepts which I feel are very important and that you may use if you're going to go into the world of digital ethnography. Ya, ada dua konsep yang memang penting sekali. Salah satunya polymedia, yang lain scalable sociality. Kalau polymedia means the whole landscape of social media that is at your disposal. Ada landskap media sosial. Tapi kenapa sih ada orang yang memiliki Instagram kalau mau ngomong dengan teman A, tapi kalau mau ngomong dengan keponakan saya memakai TikTok. Kenapa orang begitu? Pasti ada sebabnya. And that's what polymedia likes to do. Like now we have all these things in our hands, but why people choose to use one medium over another medium? Itu bukan soalnya bayar, it's the same costs. So what makes people choose? And one of the reasons is scalable sociability. If you want to talk with a lot of people, sebaiknya YouTube. You can send, or Facebook. But if it's more intimate with only a few people, kalau rombongan kecilnya WhatsApp. Itu paling banyak, 100 people udah banyak. Biasanya 10 orangnya maksimalnya. But it's much smaller. So tergantung kemauan kita, kita bisa milih. Ini untuk Facebook, ini untuk WhatsApp, ini untuk TikTok, dan seterusnya. How are we doing for time, Ade? How are we doing for time? Masih? Oke. Kalau membosankan, bilang aja kan. A little bit about ethics. I think it's very important if you're going to do digital ethnography that you are reminded that there is certain ethics here. Why? Because it seems that if you're sitting in your own room doing digital ethnography, it's relatively safe. You don't have to ask people for permission. You can use their data because they're public anyway. Udah masuk ruang publik, kenapa nggak bisa dipakai data itu? Jangan begitu. Yang satu, the first thing that is really important is that if you're doing digital ethnography, write down what you are doing. Track your own behavior. If you're moving from Facebook to Insta, to TikTok and offline, please keep track. Write down where you find all those data. I think that's very important. The other thing, if I'm doing an interview in, for example, a Facebook group, the best thing would always be to ask the moderator first. I'm an anthropologist from the Netherlands, please, minta izin. Boleh saya wawancari orang sini? Minimal mereka tahu saya berada di situ. Jangan kita memang di Facebook group ambil datanya dari semuanya, orang nggak tahu kan, itu aneh itu sebenarnya. Berarti kita harus punya nilai etikanya. There's another thing, and that's more difficult to explain. Ada satu fenomena yang lain yang lebih susah dijelaskan, itu contextual integrity. Kalau kita ambil sesuatu, if we take something from one context and we're going to write about it in a completely different context, that's not fair to the people from whom we took the data. Sebenarnya nggak boleh. Dan it is a good example, ada satu contohnya, mungkin masih ingat itu meme-nya, Buddha Stupa dari Roy Suryo, itu satu contoh yang bagus. Ini Roy Suryo, diskusinya tentang harganya itu Stupa Borobudur sedang naiknya. Mungkin mereka mau memakai uang itu, membangun itu nanti IKN-nya, isunya atau mereka bercanda, tapi dianggap oleh kaum Budanya, wah itu menjelekkan itu, udah ini isunya sara. Masalahnya timbul di situ karena itu satu joke diambil dari satu konteks. Ini sebenarnya joke tentang harganya itu satu tempat pariwisata dan IKN, tapi dibawa ke konteks yang sangat religious. Nah ributnya di situ. And so that can be the problem. If you're taking things out of context, it can hurt people. So we need to take care, I would say. Now, a few trends, a few things that I think are very interesting to focus on if you're going to digital ethnography, especially if you're working also in the field of Islam, I want to mention to the very end. And that's firstly, that we are more and more doing research on complex technological systems. Sampai sekarang saya ngomongnya banyak tentang media sosial, tapi kita memang masuk zamannya AI kan, orangnya sudah memakai ChatGPT. Itu akan mempengaruhi metode kita. Bagaimana kita ikut orang yang searching di ChatGPT? Karena saya sendiri belum tahunya lagi. Apalagi kalau mereka VR sendirian. Ya memang kita bisa masuk itu dunia cybernya juga, dunia virtual, tapi susah sekali untuk metode penelitian kita belum tahu. Another very important field is the impact of all this new digital infrastructure on our environment. Having data servers and the like, the human labor needed for that. There's more research needed there. And that's very much, of course, coming from my UNESCO chair, diversity and inclusion. Most studies, kebanyakan studi digital ethnography masih fokus pada orang seperti saya, putih, middle class, laki-laki. It's not the whole thing. There's other people that need to be studied as well. I'm just going to give you 3 examples of how you can use that and then round up, I would say. But the ethnography of complex technological systems. How do people use AI? How does it make them human? And that's definitely a new field, I would say, that you need to engage with, and that you no longer can just follow online. We again need to people offline as well. Now there's a picture here. Does anyone know what this picture represents? It's very small, I guess, but kalau gambar ini di screen-nya, ada yang tahu apa yang terjadi di situ? Nggak ada kan? Nah ini satu gambar apa yang terjadi kalau kita panggil Alexa, Google satu virtual assistant, dan kita minta satu search query. Itu apa yang terjadi di dunia ini. Berapa banyak yang perlunya, berapa data yang dimakai. Kita udah tahu misalnya kalau ChatGPT kita minta satu search query, itu sudah 1 liter air minumnya. That's what's being depicted here. What does it cost us to just ask something to ChatGPT? What kind of social relations are involved? It's very complex. If we talk about algorithms, kalau saya nggak paham algoritme. And let's be very fair, like even the people working at Google and Facebook, there's no one who completely understands their algorithm. And these are teams of hundreds of people working on one algorithm, and everyone is doing a little bit of code. Nobody gets the full picture anymore. That's very, very difficult. It's a black box, as people say. Istilahnya black box. Kita nggak bisa lihat di dalamnya, kita nggak tahu apa yang terjadi kalau kita minta satu algoritme. Tolong dicari ini. Semuanya bingung. Termasuk itu si designer dan programmer yang bikin algoritme itunya. Nah, kita sebagai orang antropologi, we as anthropologists, we don't like to understand how an algorithm works, but how other people think they understand an algorithm works. It's more difficult. Kita nggak tertarik dengan bagaimana sih si algoritmenya jalan, tapi menurut persepsinya orang. Bagaimana itu algoritmenya menurut persepsi mereka-nya? And so we like to ask people to draw. Tolong digambari. Menurut Anda, kalau algoritme Facebooknya seperti apa? Bagaimana caranya jalan? Now, if you're interested, kalau Anda tertariknya oleh topiknya itu, ada satu buku yang bagus oleh Tanja Boeger yang nulis tentang algoritmenya Facebook. She writes about the Facebook algorithm and how people think that algorithm works. Contohnya, kalau Andanya posting di Facebook, biasanya jam berapanya posting? Siang, malam? Dan ada logika kenapa misalnya postingnya siang atau malam? Hey Gary, if you put something on Facebook, would you do that in the morning, the very early morning, or the late afternoon, or late at night? Late at night. Why? Oh, yeah. That's a good reason as well. But there's a lot of people who say, like, I post my post around 11 o'clock in the afternoon, because then most people get to see it in the daytime, so I have a lot of likes, and then it will go high up. And so people think they can play the algorithm of Facebook. And I'm not sure, no? But as people say, like, if I've around so much followers, so much likes around jam 12, around 12 o'clock, this will become a good post. So we are interested in that kind of ideas. People thinking about how the algorithm works and how they can play the algorithm. And we ask as digital ethnographers, please make me a drawing of how you think an algorithm looks like. And can you draw me an evil algorithm and a good algorithm? And what does that look like? And to make all this abstract discussion a little bit smaller and graspable. So there's one thing you may want to focus at. Now, contoh kedua, I think a new trend is that a lot of people are aware that this whole idea of algorithms, AI, ChatGPT, social media, it's nice. There's a lot of benefits. Tapi ada harganya juga, ada ongkos juga. It also comes with certain costs. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of drinking water, a lot of data servers, a lot of human labor. Kalau kita memakai ChatGPT, kita pikir sophisticated sekali, pintar sekali. ini memang mesin yang bikin begini, tapi kita nggak salah itu ada manusia di belakang kan. Nah, kebanyakan algoritmanya untuk ChatGPT ditesnya oleh orang di Afrika. Karena murahnya bayarnya mereka itu. Nah, mereka yang nanti mendampingi itu yang apa jelek-jelek gitu di dunia cyber itu. Mereka yang harus testing bugs dan hate speech dan semuanya. Nah, itu ongkos juga dan kita sering tidak sadar itu. Memang ada ongkosnya juga. Ya, ada cost juga for our information society which seems to be very efficient. Nah, salah satu metode, one of the methods that we can use to find out the more physical infrastructure of the internet, of AI, of media, social media, is to do data workshops. En misalnya kita nanti masuk Serang, we go out, kita masuk Serang dengan satu rombongan kecil, 5 orangnya, satu yang pegang kamera, satu yang nulis, satu yang wawancari, terus kita akan cari di mana data hubnya, di mana kita bisa lihat internetnya ada di kehidupan sehari-hari kita. Itu kayak gampang tapi sukses sekali. Coba aja masuk Serang, di mana data kita. Itu kebanyakan mahasiswa kalau saya kirim mereka untuk data workshop, if I send them for a data workshop, palingnya itu ATM. Itu gampang, oh ini bank pasti ada data, atau CCTV. Itu internet juga. Tapi seringkali nggak kelihatan itu infrastruktur digital itu di bawah tanah kan atau di atasnya. Tapi kalau kita maksa diri dan cari di mana data kita di kehidupan kita, asyik sekali kalau dengan satu tim kita kumpul data, fotonya nanti kita diskusi. Coba aja itu. Now, and there's a third example which I think is very important, and that's the last example that I'm going to leave you with, and that's that there needs to be more research on diversity and inclusion. If we are going to do digital ethnography, let's not look at the white middle-class European guys like Gary and me. There's a lot of studies on that, but we need more studies on other people. Salah satu tren di digital ethnography sekarang saat ini adalah indigenous AI. Bagaimana suku pedalaman ada yang memakai itu ChatGPT untuk manfaat mereka sendiri. Itu udah mulai, itu seperti far stretch, aneh, tapi udah mulai. Ada satu penelitian dari teman kita Ramesh Srinivasan, yang disebutnya di sini. He did some research in reservations of Native Americans, Indian people in the United States. Bersama Hewlett Packard, die punya dana sedikitnya, dia bilang, ayo kita akan coba cari kearifan lokal. Suku pedalamannya di suku terasing di Amerika Serikat. Tapi pertamanya sampai di tempatnya orang bilang, wah kita nggak mau. Karena itu udah ada satu sejarah kan, itu data diambil dari kita dan dipakai against us. Ada ini sejarah kolonial yang sangat kolonial, kita selalu diperbudakkan dengan data-data kita nggak mau menyerahkan lagi data kita. But what if we co-design, kita bersama-sama kreasinya satu database menurut filsafat kita, kearifan kitanya. And this is one example in which they built a database with the Manzanita tree. Itu semacam itu pohon waringin, pohon yang misterius. Nah, mereka bilang kita bikin database, tapi dengan pohon itu nanti ada gambar di sini, di sana, ada video. Then we use that as a kind of principle to structure our database. Let's try to do those things. For example, we are now working in IKN in Nusantara. We are hoping to work with beberapa suku Dayak. Kita coba bikin satu database dengan kearifan lokal Dayak, tapi jangan dengan software dan hardware dari luar, tapi kita bersamanya mendesain itu database-nya atau app-nya. That's a new frontier, I would say, very exciting. Now, I'm skipping a little bit. I'm going to the conclusions because I want to leave some time for Gary as well. Ini kesimpulannya. This is the conclusions. And there's a funny anecdote, of course, is the gambar yang lucu. What is digital ethnography? It's a method that is very flexible, it's pop-up, and it's much used to focus on contemporary society. Yang terjadi pada ini, masyarakat kontemporer. In fact, it's not very new. It's following old principles of ethnography, but it's being brought into the digital realm. But there's not a lot of new things here. Also, digital ethnography is not just one method, it's a whole range of methods, and we use them creatively. It can be interviews, it can be following people, it can be participation, it can us become fashion bloggers, for example. We need to realize that it comes with a lot of new ethical challenges and that we were not used to. What do we do with informed consent? Kita harus minta izin dulu. What do we do with privacy, which has become a much bigger issue in the digital world than in the offline world? What do we do to keep the data safe? Keamanan data, itu penting sekalinya juga. And I think if I'm going to do this talk next year, it will be a completely different story. Because digital ethnography changes with whatever new digital tool we have. It's one thing to talk about social media, and Gary will be pointing out the thing that with AI, we are looking at a completely different world, new challenges as well. And so 1 or 2 years' time, a different story again. But it's for sure that we need to understand the digital in order to make sense. Nah, sekian dulu. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dan moderator kita lagi pergi ke kamar mandi atau saya nggak tahu. Oh, dia sedang lari. Mas Ali. Jangan saya sendirian dong. Don't worry.
Terima kasih Pak Gary untuk presentasinya. Pak Gary tadi mengenalkan kepada sorry Pak Bar tadi sudah mengenalkan Profesor Gary. Pak Bar tadi memperkenalkan kepada kita etnografi, ada yang tradisional, ada yang digital. One of the main differences between the two is that the field in traditional ethnography, the field is physical and our body is the tool. And then in digital ethnography, the field is the internet, especially social media, and we have a lot of tools to access the data. But in digital ethnography, there are various issues like the issue of security, ethics, and so on and so forth. To deepen our understanding, I will invite you to ask Professor Bart later at the end of the session. Thank you, Pak Bart. Very interesting. And then I would like to invite the second speaker, Professor Gary. He is Professor of Islamic Studies at the University of Wales. He has spent more than 30 years doing research on Islamic digital humanities. He will be speaking about Islamic algorithms. Actually, it is the title of his latest book. Professor Gary will be speaking around maybe 40 to 50 minutes. And then at the end of the session, I will invite you to ask questions on these issues. Oke. Makan buah dulu, Pak.
Ya.
Yeah, this one. Sorry.
I'm not going to sit down.
Yeah.
Easier if I sit.
But Gary is a rock star, so he won't up front. So.
Give me a moment.
Yeah, don't worry. Your own clicker.
Oh, you never know.
Yeah.
Assalamualaikum. Just realised it's very loud. Can you turn it down a bit? Otherwise you're going to be deafened by the end of this session. All right, so I've been asked to talk a little bit about my book and my research and all of this stuff, but it's not just about me, thankfully. Let me just give you a little bit of background, though. I've been working on digital materials for 30 years, so I've seen many different formats, from very early computers, pre-browser. Looking at you, you won't remember a time before a browser. Do you remember just looking at the internet, plugging it in, waiting for 5 minutes for it to turn itself on, and the internet being very slow? Probably not. Probably you're all digital natives, or many of you are digital natives. But there was a time before web browsers, before mobile phones, and so forth, and I researched some of that as well. The reason I got into it was I did my PhD on Ijtihad and religious authority, and when I was doing field work in Malaysia, Pakistan and the UK, people were starting to talk about using the internet to talk to scholars and to talk about religious opinions. So I got very interested in this because it was very early days. I came from a background that included working in the media. So I worked in radio production, worked in television, and then I studied after that. So I came into education a little bit later, so my focus was slightly different. I've always been interested in Islam, and in particular working with Muslim communities in the UK, and I'll show you some of the latest bits and pieces from one of my research projects later in this session. So Virtually Islamic, that's my website. So if you want to go take a look, you can Google me and maybe you'll find me. If you search for Virtually Islamic, it gives you more info on what I do. Just need an extra hand here. All right, these are the books that I've worked on. So there's an evolution of different books. Some of them are different language editions as well. I don't know, has anybody read any of this stuff? Anybody studying digital Islam here? One. Anybody else studying digital Islam? Got a few people, maybe. Well, yeah, these books cover some of the ground. I'll explain about my methodology in a moment. So that's the new one that I'm trying to talk about at the moment, Islamic algorithms, online influence in the Muslim metaverse. I'll unpack the book in a few moments. My main interest really is, and probably I should ask you this, when Islam is always on, because it's on your phones, you're all using your phones, I can see. When Islam is always on, does that help you in your understanding of religious values? Or does it get in the way? If you've got a question about a religious issue, is it better to go and talk to a scholar, or do you go online, or you go to Google, and you put a question in? Mostly online. Yeah, so that's very different, because 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you'd have to go and talk to Imam, Sheikh, Peer, whoever. But it's changed a lot now. It's very immediate. How many people shop around for opinions? Like you go to the supermarket and you don't like one opinion, so you go to the next store. You go from bananas to oranges to apples. How many people go around to different websites to look for different opinions? One or two. How many people look at websites from outside of Indonesia? Anybody here look at any websites from Other countries? Hmm? Which one? Oh yeah. Yeah. Any others? Anybody look at anything from outside of Indonesia? Or do you all look at Indonesian websites? Because there's a lot of religious opinion that comes out from other places, including written in Indonesian language. So I'm just curious to know. All of this has an impact. Maybe your parents or your grandparents weren't online. So what did they do if they wanted religious knowledge or information? They'd have to go make an appointment, or they'd have to go down the road and ask somebody. It wasn't immediate. So what I'm interested in is how that's happened and why it's important. Or is it important? Maybe it's not important at all, but I'm interested in that as a question. I'm sorry, this is an eye test. So you can go and buy your glasses afterwards. Because the screen is a bit small, I thought it might be a bit bigger, so I'll have to read it out to you. Basically, this is the content list of the new book, just to show the types of things that I've written about. And mainly, this is to remind me about what I wrote about, because I can't remember. I wrote the book and I've forgotten all about it. So in my latest book, it's very much focused on religious issues, values, and individuals, and influences, and influencers. That's a long list, isn't it? I look at how different people within Islamic history have been represented. And I go back to before Muhammad, so I look at the way in which different prophets are represented online. What do websites say about Adam? What do they say about Musa, Ibrahim, and others? I've unpacked that and see what information people get. So why am I interested in that? Is there a good reason? Any ideas why I should be interested? Or is it just for the sake of writing a book? Well, one of the reasons I'm interested is, with algorithms and LLMs, these large language models, they're scraping the internet. They're trying to find information. That information is being processed using algorithms and using search engines, so that if you put in a question about Adam or Ibrahim or Musa into your search engine or into ChatGPT, it's going to come up with this information that I'm looking at. This is what's giving you the information. But also there are problems, because there can be hallucinations, there can be false information, there can be information that is inaccurate, it's got no references. So I'm interested in where that source code is coming from. If you think about source code for programming, I want to know where the source code for Islam online is coming from as well. So it's about unpacking that. And then I look at Muhammad and digital influence. How is Muhammad represented online? How are the different phases in Muhammad's life? Are they accurate? If somebody with no knowledge about Islam goes to ChatGPT and puts in a question, says, tell me everything about Muhammad, or tell me about the Hijrah, for example, what kind of information is going to come out? Is it going to be accurate? Is it going to be full of lies or misinformation or distortions, or it might not come from your own particular religious basis? So it's important to try and unpack where the information is coming from and who's putting the information there. Otherwise, potentially, there's a distorted view of Islam that appears online. And that's what's informing ChatGPT and the language, or the LLMs, the language learning models, or large language models. Then I look at other aspects of Islamic history. So I look at different people from the Prophet's family. I look at all of the Prophet's wives to see what the internet says about them, if anything. Some of them are well represented, like Aisha. There's a lot written about Aisha. Some of it is positive, some of it is very negative. There's a lot of rumor, conjecture. It's the same kind of stuff you see written in tafsir and other sources, but this is online. And it's interesting to see who's putting that information out there. If you're interested in those important figures in Islamic history and you want to find out more, you're writing an essay or a paper here, you might go to ChatGPT and take a look, and you might come out with a lot of inaccurate information, or you might come out with some distorted information. So you might not get a very good mark. So that's another issue altogether. But yeah, so I talk about the Prophet's family, and then I look at things like law. So looking at the different schools of law within the Sunni context and how they're represented online, because law and authority is one of the big drivers of Islam and the internet. Ideas about fatwas online are driven by legal sources. Some of those legal sources appear on the internet. Some are not very well represented as well. And that brings in another issue. Who's putting the money in? If you want to put your brand out there, if you want to put your ideas about Islam out there, you need money, you need a good website, you want something as good as Amazon or a very good website with 3 clicks you find your information. So it takes a lot of money and investment for people to be able to promote their ideas about Islam, and not everybody is doing it. In the past, for example, I looked at Al-Azhar University, and they weren't interested in the internet. They couldn't be bothered to put anything out. They didn't understand it, or they looked at a computer maybe. I don't want to be rude to my friends there, but I'm talking about generations ago. They didn't know what a computer was or how it was going to be important. So they lost their influence in some ways because other people came on board who were very good at the internet. They might not be ulama, they might be just somebody with a laptop in the bedroom. But they could put out a website that looked very Islamic, with different symbols and information, and they could put their own information out there and become influential. So that dynamic is very different. When you start following somebody online and you think they're an Islamic scholar, then you find out, well, actually, it's just that guy down the road. It makes a big difference. Other aspects of this, because I've tried to represent Islam in terms of its diversity as well. So I look at different aspects of Shiism. I look at contemporary ayatollahs as well, and the way in which they represent themselves online. I want the whole spectrum of Islam without essentializing it in a box. I look at Sufism as well, because there's a lot of interesting material about esoteric ideas and how they represent themselves online. I have to look at electronic jihad as well. It's what we call, I don't know if there's an Indonesian expression for this, the elephant in the room. Have you got a good, no, you haven't got, you haven't got an equivalent one for that. Well, it's there. If you're writing about digital Islam and you want to write something holistically, you can't ignore the fact that there are some jihad players out there. So I write about that too. Now there are lots of ethical issues to do with looking at those things, and I could talk about them separately because they're too huge. Don't just go and do it. But I'm safe enough in my university in Wales. They don't really know what I'm doing. I can just get on with it. So I'm doing that for this book. And then I sort of wrap it up with something on contemporary influences. I've got something on Palestine and Gaza. Obviously, I wrote the book before October 7. And I've also got, brace yourself, I've got a section on Indonesia. So I'm not an Indonesian speaker, I'm not an Indonesian expert. You can say what you like about it, and I won't know what you're saying. But I wrote something on influencers in Indonesia based on a previous visit. I was here, well, I was in Jakarta in 2019. So there's a very short section on Indonesia. The reason I put it in was because there wasn't a lot on Indonesia available online, so I thought at least I'd get the conversation going. And this is what I'd like to say to you guys, is that this is an underrepresented area of research. If you want to write or be an academic, I'm not saying it's a great idea, but but if you do want to be an academic and you want to write journal articles or write chapters or write a book, then work on digital Islam. It's underrepresented. And in Indonesia, there's not much. There's the new journal coming out, but there aren't any definitive books. So it takes a person from Wales to write something about Indonesia online. There are one or two other writers, obviously Melina Lim and others, but there's not a lot out there. So it's a big opportunity for you as students to think about what you want to write and to actually do something, get something published. So this is an opportunity as well, because we're at this early stage, and I would say that this area offers you a chance to do lots of interesting and different things as well. Certainly from where I'm sitting, there's always something new and different. It's not always pleasant, but there's always something there to write about as well. So it's a very dynamic field. That's the end of my sales pitch for that bit. Thinking about algorithms, if I start talking about algorithms too much, your eyes might glaze over, you might fall asleep, or something disastrous might happen. But I think we have to talk about AI. Most of my work has been on web, digital, social media, but I realized a few years ago that I was going to have to do more on AI, and it's a natural transition from what I was doing before. So I'm interested in how Islam is impacted by AI. What are the knowledge equations? What is the dynamic going on there that causes a person to look at their phone and find one particular piece of knowledge rather than another? So I mean, that's the essence of the book, really. If you think about knowledge equations. And I've got some charts as well that you can take a look at. There we go. I don't know if anybody's aware of this term, cyber Islamic environments. Anybody come across this term that I've used in my books? It's a sort of umbrella term, and by that I mean it's changed a lot. When I brought it in 1999, some of you weren't born, but when I brought that in, the definition was very different to how it works today. But it's still a sort of overarching definition. It includes lots of different bits and pieces, ideas about Islamic expression, leadership, sources. How do you use the Quran online? Do you just go there? Do you rely on the translation? Or do you challenge the translation? Is it authentic? Is it genuine? Is it searchable? Does it get you the answers that you need? Networking. Are you able to network with other people with similar ideas to you online? Has the internet taught you anything about Muslim diversity? What about Islam outside of Indonesia? Have you taken a look to see what other people practice? Other people's ritual practices and interpretations and understandings? That all fits in with the idea of cyber Islamic environment. And then there are things like politics. We all like a bit of politics, especially in the UK at the moment. But politics is a big driver in terms of Muslim politics. Anybody follow Muslim political parties online? Anybody look at anything to do with political discourse? You must look at political discourse if you're students somewhere under there. Maybe one or two of you take a look at those things as well. And then you have to incorporate, if you want to study this properly, like Bart was saying, you need to think about the different technological interfaces. You can't just rely on one type of source material. You have to be very aware of multiple sources. But the problem is, how do you study Instagram? You might be looking at Instagram now, or you might be looking at X, or if you're an older person, you might be looking at Facebook, or you might have another channel that you like to look at, TikTok. Any TikTok fans here? Yeah. That's TikTok, yeah. TikTok fans over here, right. So, how do you study TikTok? If you wanted to capture some information, there's a lot of activity about Islam on TikTok, but how do you capture it? What do you do? What's the methodology? This is the challenge for us. Because TikTok, you see it 1 minute, and it's gone the next. True? It disappears very quickly. If you see something, the next time you go to TikTok, it's vanished, possibly. So you have to think about how you're going to study these things as well. The same with X or Twitter. Anybody use X here? Any fans? Hey, we got one X person. Very good. Okay, it's my informal survey, part 2. Instagram. Anybody like Instagram? Instagram. Okay. So, do you Instagram over here or TikTok? So we got Instagram versus TikTok. This is the TikTok side, and this is the Instagram side. Any other platforms that you like? Telegram? Anybody? Quora? Okay. Other platforms? Facebook, yeah, Facebook. Facebook? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very good. So, that's interesting to find out what different people use. But with all of these, with all of these platforms, you have to think, if you're writing about it, let's say there's something on Facebook, if you're studying digital Islam, how do you record it? How do you reference it? How do you keep a safe copy of it? Is it ethically allowed? If you're on private Facebook, you can't copy it and put it into an essay. So you have to anonymize it, and even then you have to be very careful. So how do you keep your data secure when you've captured it as well? Let's say you put something from TikTok into an essay, and you made a copy of it, and then the professor comes along later and said, "Oh, this is very interesting. Can you show me the TikTok, please?" And you go, "Huh?" So you have to keep records of everything you write about as well, and reference it properly. And so this is all part of the sort of dynamics of how we study cyber Islamic environments. And we have to be conscious of technological shifts as well. Because 10 years ago, there was no AI, well, not in the sense that we know about today. So technology changes all the time, trends change. You might have been using other platforms 5 years ago, maybe not TikTok. So the trends, digital trends, also have to be, you also have to be aware of those as well. So these are my key questions, all right? As I come from religious studies, I've got different questions to Bart. He's got a different approach to me as well. So we look at things very differently. But how do online environments challenge traditional models of authority? All right, let me ask you this. If you're in, let's say you've got a question, you've got a personal question that you want to get answered, sensitive personal question, do you go online to try and get an answer, or do you go down to the mosque and talk to some alim or somebody down there? What do people do? How many people go online to get an answer for a question? Not many. Online? Yeah, online. Okay, interesting. So the question is whether traditional scholars feel challenged by online scholars. Because in the UK, a lot of the older traditional imams. People don't talk to them anymore. Sad, but true. Because lots of the younger demographic, the Gen Z or Gen Z, they'll go online to get their information. So the traditional scholars are being ignored and they're out of touch, out of date. Also, we have to ask, what's the impact of the digitally literate scholars when it goes beyond traditional boundaries? So in the UK, a lot of people will go and they'll talk to a scholar or an authority outside of the UK. They'll find somebody they like and they'll talk to that individual, and it could be completely outside of their town or their city or the country. So that has an impact too on how they understand religion. And then we have influencers. You know influencers? The role of Islamic influencers, that's quite a big deal. In Indonesia, there are lots of Islamic lifestyle influencers. I've seen them. They're going online and they're showing their lifestyle, which is usually very expensive lifestyle. And sometimes they're selling products as well. Am I right? So you get a religious message and now buy this. I don't know if is there a contradiction there in terms of religion and advertising and so forth, but that's really interesting. What's the impact of these people? You wouldn't have seen that maybe 10 years ago either. So the way I'm looking at this is really, I take snapshots. I'm not the digital ethnographer that Bart is. Because there's so much going on. Every time there's a big event, I'm at my computer capturing what's going on. That might be something profound, like at the time of 9/11, I captured lots of online content which kept disappearing because of the different channels it was operating in. So I've got an archive of a lot of media that is unavailable elsewhere, but I had to capture it because I knew I was going to write about it later on. So I spent many hours there. The same with the so-called Arab Spring in Tahrir Square. Do people remember the Tahrir Square Arab Spring? Yeah. And how social media was so important there. That became quite interesting. I captured a lot of that social media, but also I ended up talking to people in Tahrir Square, which raises interesting questions about the line between researcher and participant and how you sort of process all of this stuff. Yep, so I've said already the kind of areas I'm interested in. It's a bit of everything. So there are many methodological challenges. How do you capture the data? Before you start writing about digital Islam, you've got to think about that. How do you analyze it? What kind of methodology are you going to use? What are the ethics? I think there's not enough talk about ethics. Is your data being securely stored? What do you do about anonymity, privacy, photographs? It might be that in the Indonesian context, people are happy to have photographs taken. Am I right? You're sort of a photo culture here, more than many places. Yeah, but if you were sharing photographs and you wrote an article and you were sharing photographs and the article was published outside of Indonesia, you might have ethical problems. So you have to consider all these sorts of different nuances, including how you negotiate technological change as well. And can you do research from your phone? It's possible, but there are lots of challenges. And we also have to remember that religious content is not everything that people are looking at. Sometimes researchers, they go into a silo and they think everybody's just looking at religious stuff. But we know they're looking at other things too. Shopping, online shopping, social media, TV, news, and some of the nastier sides of the internet as well. And people are looking at all sorts of things. So we can't just assume religion is a very small part, I think, of what people are looking at online. So you have to put that into perspective as well. How am I doing for time? 15 minutes to go. All right. Anybody heard about the term Shake Google? You've heard about this? When I talk to my friends, I talk to my friends and I say, oh, are you going to try and find a religious opinion on this? They'll say, yeah, we're going to go to talk to Sheikh Google. You know, this is the big authority. Because Sheikh Google is very patient. He's always there. He always gives us an answer. He's not troubled. We don't have to make an appointment. And he'll give us lots of different answers so we can pick the answer that we like. So Sheikh Google, maybe that's a good thing. Whoops. Hold on. But now we have to go beyond Google, because there are so many other search options out there. So if you're looking at digital Islam, you have to think about using other search engines as well. TikTok, our friends over here, TikTok is more popular than Google for searching. People go and search TikTok for information, including students for essays, which completely bewilders me, to be honest. But we have to be conscious of these channels as well if we're going to be researching this. Without scaring you, I don't want to put you off, but it helps to be familiar with other things like, anybody tried Gemini? Gemini as an AI? Copilot? Copilot, good. I mean, that's built around OpenAI. Llama. Let's talk about Llama. That's Meta's new one. So Facebook, it's going to be integrated into Facebook and Messenger. What about Grok? Not a character from a movie, but that is Elon Musk's AI. So these and others are all going to be important in terms of search channels that we have to be aware of. So we have to be also conscious that for people producing this information that you're reading and putting in your essays or researching, trying to find out about, it's more important maybe for them to be good at the internet than it is for them to be scholars or scholars, or have learned the Quran and learned the Hadith and so forth. It's more important that they're good at the internet, they're good at web design and so on, because they're going to get bigger audiences. So in the book, I'm interested in how this digital landscape is changing. People define themselves in different ways as well. I am definitely not Gen Z. I think I'm Generation X or something. But how many of you classify yourselves as Gen Z or Gen Z? Yeah? But there's also millennials. Do you use that term? Because there can be any millennials over here? Or Gen Z? You Gen Z? Oh, Gen Z? No? How many people define themselves as digital natives? That means brought up on the internet. From when you were a baby, the first thing you were doing was, like you see the kids everywhere, is playing with the phone. Keep the child quiet, give them the phone, you know. No people defining themselves as digital natives. They're all different audiences and different stratifications that you have to consider when looking at cyber Islam. So we have different digitally literate scholars, authorities, influencers, and networks. I haven't got time to unpack all of that right now. But the key thing maybe is the technology. So when you're looking at a website, what do you look for first? What makes you think a website's going to work for you? Not these guys, because they look at TikTok all the time. But if you're going to a website, what kind of things are you looking for? Searchability, maybe? Responses? Do you think about branding? Has it got a nice logo? Do I identify the logo? Does it look Islamic? What makes a website look Islamic? Any ideas? What would you look for? Picture of a mosque? Picture of the Quran? Picture of a scholar? Calligraphy? Some Arabic? Quotation from the Quran? Ayah or something? Maybe a sound file? Something like this? So it's what makes a site Islamic is important too. And whether it's multimedia, because there's a lot of really boring websites out there. People here are attached to their phones 24/7. There's something there that's making them excited about watching a live stream. Yeah, that must be it. Yeah, of course. So all of these are factors that actually impact on religious authority, because if authorities haven't got these ideas right, then nobody's going to look at their website. You see some religious authorities who are very scholarly and so forth and well established, and they've got very boring websites, just PDFs of sermons or PDFs of books. You can't search it, you can't do much with it. And yet there are other people who are very interactive. They put, anybody watch sermons online? Anybody watch YouTube sermons? 1, 2. Any YouTube sermons? Do you watch? You watch YouTube? Or Vimeo? Yeah. So there's a few people who watch sermons as well. So all of these are kind of important. And it's what I call the net imam effect, really, with different aspects and approaches towards interpretation, leadership, the way in which they transmit their own ideas and identities as well. They're all key factors. I'll skip that one for now. We've talked about platforms. Talk a little bit about AI. As we move towards Imam AI, can we really talk about Islamic algorithms? I mean, I've put that in the book as a title. Is it really a thing or not? Can we have an algorithm that is Islamic? What does that define? I can unpack it. I mean, as a something maybe which will help how Islam is mediated. But quite who Imam AI is another question altogether. There's a lot of talk, when we talk about artificial intelligence, people start thinking about robots, and they start thinking about, they've got a very, you know what I mean by dystopian? They're very scared of the future. Is anybody here scared of artificial intelligence? Does it make you scared? Or are you happy about it? Do you think the robots are going to take over? You know, these are we have to take away the assumptions that maybe artificial intelligence has got something to do with what you've seen in science fiction movies, Terminator and all of this stuff, whether that's really a thing or not. Just got a little blip here. It wouldn't be the same if the clicker didn't work, would it? Hold on. There we go. Hopefully that's problem solved. Yeah, so I mean, my question is, a lot of you are interested, that's the wrong one. A lot of you are interested in AI and Islam, but how do you approach the subject without bringing in these dystopian ideas and stereotypes about what it really means in terms of knowledge generation? And we mustn't forget, it was Al-Khwarizmi who came up with the notion of algorithms anyway, the important Persian mathematician and theorist. So the algorithm concept actually comes from a Muslim perspective indirectly as well. There are different types of algorithms as well. So if you're thinking about writing about algorithms, consider the different types: machine learning, classical algorithms. I'll leave my definition there. You won't want that. So my idea about what an Islamic algorithm is, I suggested it refers to the ways in which individuals might locate the divine through a digital interface. So maybe you can find Allah, or you can find some aspect of Islam through a digitally mediated interface, and how that is influenced by the creation of particular data structures and relationships. And then there are the issues of authenticity as well to consider. But it's really about whether people are using apps, or they're using social media, or they're using the web to help them to do things like recite the Quran, or pray, or go on Hajj, or give to charity, etc. So how those religious functions and actions can be facilitated through algorithms as well. I'm not saying I've got all the answers, by the way, not yet. So they bring in some significant questions anyway for you to investigate. Right, let's just go through these. 3 minutes left, so I'm going to skip these ones for now. And I wanted to mention my research projects, because I'm working on two funded big money research projects to do with digital Islam. And they're the kind of things that I'd quite like to develop in Indonesia as well, if I can find people who are interested, who've got the money. So so this is the project. You can all go and have a look at this if you want to see what I do, or what I've been doing for the last 2 years. Or if you're interested in Islam in the UK, this is called Digital British Islam. If you want to find it, it's at digitalbritishislam.com, and that's our call for papers if you want to give a conference paper in February next year in the UK. Yeah, so we were funded by a research grant. I'm working with colleagues in Edinburgh University, some of you might know Edinburgh, and Coventry University as well. I put the picture up of my colleagues just to keep them quiet. So this is my research team that I work with. So we've got a couple of postgraduate researchers. We've got 2 people who are research fellows. So they're well-established academics, Sadiq and Khadija. And then there are 2 co-investigators, one at Edinburgh, Frederick, and one of them at Coventry, Soria. And then there's me, I'm the principal investigator. So that's our team, and we're all working on different aspects of digital Islam in Britain. And we're trying to find out the answers to some of the questions I've raised already. How people are using their devices. What kind of things do they do online? Without being intrusive, we are asking. So we use different methodologies to do this, and these methodologies are different to what I do in my book. We're doing interviews. Anybody here do interviews for their work? Interviews? Yeah. Okay. Participant diaries. Have you ever tried that? It's quite interesting. We're doing online participant diaries. And we're doing a survey. It's the first UK survey of Islam and the internet that's been undertaken. So that's a big deal. Focus groups, we work very well with communities. Does anybody know anything about the Muslim communities in the UK? Have you heard anything about Muslims in the UK? Yeah, because there's quite a high population. You know, it's expanding. I don't know what the exact figure is. It depends on which statistics you look at. But 4 to 5 million people identify as Muslim. It's a relatively big community, or communities, very diverse as well, and complex. So in each city you've got multiple affiliations. You go down the street, every mosque is celebrating at different times for Eid, and they've got different ideas about what they do. But so it's quite complex. But anyway, and the other thing we're doing is archiving. So we're actually capturing content. One of the things is that when you're working in this field, the content can disappear very quickly. So we're building the first archive of online activity to do with Muslim communities. And you can go take a look if you're interested to see what we've done. You can't see that very well, but if you go on to digitalbritishislam.com and click on the archives. But what we've done is we haven't just produced a list of links, but we've also provided metadata so that it's searchable, and we've provided narratives. So if you go to our archive, you can see we explain every site, who the people are behind it, what they do, and we make multiple captures of the same site so that you can compare between different periods. And we have articles too, so we did something on Ramadan recently, how people use the internet to celebrate Ramadan in the UK. So it gives you an insight. Because of all of our teams, Islamic Studies PhDs, and they've all written widely in books and so forth, they provide very authoritative voices, and they're also from different communities as well, so that really helps. And just very quickly, sorry I've overrun, I have another project too called Digital Islam Across Europe. We're doing similar things, but we're doing it over 5 countries, and we've got teams from Spain, Sweden, Poland, Lithuania, and the UK. So we're looking at different things in this project, different forms of networking, religious ideas, and so on. And again, I won't show you all the teams because that's laborious, but we do have some really interesting things. We're looking at gender in particular, online, offline interactions, which Bart was talking about. We're doing data analysis as well, data visualization, and so on. Anyway, that's just brief on that one. And that's it from me. Yeah, take a look at Virtually Islamic. I hope you found it interesting. All right.
Thank you, Pak Gary, for the presentation. One thing that I need to underline, the issue that Professor Gary arose is about religious authority. In the past, when people had problems with religion, they went to an ulama, to an alim, to ask about the issue. But then with the emergence of the internet, especially social media, like Facebook and so on and so forth, including AI, people are moving to the internet. The question is then, how about, are the answers provided by AI and also by social media authoritative enough or reliable? And then what about the future of the ulama? Will they still exist or will they be gone? We don't know. To deepen our understanding about Islamic digital humanities, I would like to invite Professor Bart and also Professor Gary to sit on the front chair, and I would like to invite you to maybe to ask some questions. We have half an hour. The first three questions from Abe and from you, Rahman, and then yes, okay. Please mention your name, your affiliations, and please make your questions short. Could anyone help me to? Okay.
Thank you for your time, Professor Gary. Firstly, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ivan Zulkais. My major is Broadcasting and Islamic Communications, and also I'm in second semester. And based on your presentation, you talk about AI, and also when I still enjoyed with AI, I also be a part of useful to search about information that I don't know, or maybe something that I don't understand in school, maybe or in class. So my question is, why AI be a part of propaganda to, to destroy Islam with controversial picture, and also why it still get defended by people who make AI? Thank you.
Can you answer now, or are you collecting first or answer now?
Will you answer the questions directly, or we collect three questions?
Sorry?
Which one?
You first want to collect some? No, let's go. Just carry on, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting question. There's no one answer to it. I think that if you just used AI for your religious knowledge, then you might come unstuck after a while. And one of the things that's interesting that I haven't put into this presentation, but I've looked at elsewhere, is that even scholars are saying you can use AI as a research assistant. So maybe like me, you don't have a research assistant, but if you've got a question or something, you could use AI to help you write your sermon. Now that might see, as an example, or help you formulate some answer to a religious question. I'm sure a lot of you have used ChatGPT, or have you? Or AI at all? Yeah? Okay. So you know it can have positives in terms of it being a research assistant, or it can bring you in a broad amount of knowledge. But one of the problems is hallucinations. Do you know what I mean by hallucinations? What's the Indonesian for?
Hallucinasi.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay, so if we get false positives from using AI, ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever, where it makes things up, if there's a question and it can't find the answer, it just gets creative. Now, different versions of GPT, we're on 4.0 at the moment, we're moving to 5, have got better at this in terms of the way they scrape the internet and so on. But at the start, there were a lot of hallucinations, and you can imagine that that could be quite dangerous maybe for some people. It might be more appropriate in esoteric forms of Islam, but certainly it can cause a lot of problems. So I suppose the main thing is how people mediate it. There are scholarly opinions. People have written fatwas saying how you can use AI and that you can use it for religious purposes. Obviously the good of it, you can bring out the good of it if you're conscious of what you're doing. I think the primary concern is people think that you're just going to get all your answers from AI and that's it. Also, it's very poor at referencing. Despite 4.0 saying it does references, I've done some analysis of the referencing and it's really poor. I looked at translation from the Quran and I was seeing if AI could produce a translation of the opening surah, and then looking at where it got its source from, and it was very mixed, and it wasn't scholarly, if that's a virtue, if you want scholarly. It came from very generic websites, a Sufi website, how to pray website, some other sites that weren't very good. So it's about balancing things out, I think. Sorry, long answer.
Okay, thank you, Bar and Gary. My name is Abe, and I'm from Digital Muslim Review. Studies, especially in digital ethnography. So, what the unique challenge that my researcher face in this region? This is the question for Bar. And the last, I think that Gary say how about the future of ulama. That I'm from Arabic department. That I think to AI present that how about translator in the future. I think it is to handling with AI present. Thank you.
Yeah, that first question was a very big question, Mas Abi. So, what kind of method would you use? Now, let me try to briefly answer the very big question, because in fact it would very much depend on what you're going to do research on, I would say. I was trying to convince you, digital ethnography is not just one method, it's a package of methods. It can be participant observation, it can be online observation, it can be the collecting and capturing of data, as Gary was showing. There's a lot of things there, and depending on our needs. And that's why I very much like this term pop-up ethnography. Depending on what is needed, we use our methods very flexibly. So there's not one answer to that. What I was also trying to say, these methods may change very quickly. And by now, at least anthropologists have found being comfortable with some of the social media, how we should be following people around. But WhatsApp, for example, is very difficult for us to follow still, because it's a very intimate, we need to be invited first. So is ChatGPT. And for us, it's very difficult to keep track of that. And so we still need to reinvent our methods in that sense as well. Yeah, but I need to know more clearly what you want to do research on before I can answer that question exactly, I would say. So we talk later on. Gary. The future of ulama. Is there a future?
Just on the methodology question, I should say that in doing this work for 30 years, when I started, there wasn't a methodology. There was nothing, there was no template, there was nobody else who had done it because it was all brand new. And I think that's an additional challenge for a lot of us, that we have to develop methodologies. You can borrow from other disciplines if there's anything out there, but quite often there are unique challenges to doing this kind of work in relation to Islam and Muslims online that require specific solutions. And I've tried to do some of that through trial and error, sometimes error, but trying to get it right in terms of how we develop this. But it's not static. You're always developing, you're always thinking of new things. There's a plus in that because it makes it interesting. And the other plus is that you can have interesting conversations with people doing digital ethnography or whatever you want to call it in other disciplinary areas as well. So there's quite a lot of cooperation and, well, in some cases, interaction within these fields. So I mean, it's just something I had to develop as I went on. I learned how to code. I learned how to hack computers. I had a background in that, some of this anyway, but you know, just so I could understand what hackers were doing, I had to be able to go and do it myself. So I don't actually recommend you learning to hack on the university campus, by the way. It's probably not a very good idea. And I should also give a health warning that maybe there are some sites that there might be problematic for you to research as well, because if your search history becomes public or you don't use a VPN, then that might cause problems for you locally. If you're looking at a radical group or something like this, and then it triggers an alarm on the university campus or something like this, you have to be very careful. And does anybody use a VPN for their research? A VPN, virtual personal network. It should be mandatory.
Yeah.
Because it disguises your ISP so that people don't know where you're coming from. Yeah, but it's good for researchers as well. Anyway, so I'll go back to the question. Just thinking,
Future,
future ulama. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, in the current generation, there are ulama who are computer literate, who understand how computers work, social media, YouTube, their influence. In previous generations, it was often the case that these people had a team of digital technology people typing it in for them. You never expected to see a sheikh typing it in themselves. So in terms of the future, I think some people are having to adapt, and there are some Islamic institutions that are teaching the correct skills so that people can code and put their materials together. And there are also people who have appointed themselves as ulama or sheikh who might not have a proper qualification, but because they're very good at taking photographs and putting themselves on YouTube and they've got money behind them, they're able to get an influence. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, that might be a good thing, but they might be outside of governmental circles. They might be in a more in a zone that's seen as more radical or problematic. I don't know if that answers the question, but there'll always be ulama, but they might just be more wedded to the. A lot of them are stuck on their phones like everybody else these days. They're seeing what the other people are saying, the other scholars. They're comparing their answers and all this stuff.
Maybe I can add like a few lines to that. Like one thing that we noticed throughout the years, that the establishment is very slow in catching up with these things. And that's not only for religion, that's also for politics. And so the first people to get hold of new media, new emerging technologies, is fringe groups. And they don't have to be radical groups, it can be very small minorities that don't have their own outlets, radio, television. But for example, here in Indonesia, we have noticed that NU and Muhammadiyah overall were very slow in catching up with social media, whereas PKS was very quickly jumping in. Why? Because NU and Muhammadiyah have their own newspapers, they have their own radio stations. But they will catch up after some time. Why? Because there's much more money there, there's much more momentum, much more people. And it's the same for ulama. Established ulama will be very slow at first, but in time they will be catching up again. And one thing that really stands out if you look at religious authority here in Southeast Asia is the enormous rise of young women speaking on behalf and for Islam. And that's very new, that's great, I would say. We get a different perspective. But we don't know in the long run if patriarchal society is catching up again, if that stays. And that's a big challenge as well. But that's a golden rule. And that fringe groups, minorities, people who are less well represented, first go to new technologies. Establishment catches up.
Okay. Okay, I'm so excited when Mr. Bart speak. Okay. Okay, my name is Saif Rohman. Okay, I'm so excited when Mr. Bart speak Sundanese, and I also learn Dutch. I speak Dutch Netherlands.
Dat klinkt heel erg goed.
Ja,
Klinkt
ja.
prachtig.
Goed, hard. Ja. Sorry. I have two questions for you, Mister. Yeah. The first question: in the future, we will live in metaverse. So how to make research about anthropology digital approach? And the second question: could general anthropological theory be used for digital anthropology research? So I am a new student anthropology in Gajah Mada University also. So I'm so excited. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions. Thank you so much. Dank u wel. Mooie vragen. The first question, what about the metaverse and how to deal with that anthropologically or ethnographically, I would rather say, not? Because it's not just anthropology that owns this method. There's a whole lot of good examples. Not? One of the things that I'm thinking of is the work by Tom Boelstorff. You may want to look that up, who worked on Second Life, which is one of the first virtual realities with its own virtual currencies. There's some great work on World of Warcraft. That's also like, of course, like a kind of virtual world avant la lettre, you could say. It doesn't change much. But there's a whole discussion about virtual versus real here among anthropologists. And some people would still refer to these places as like virtual worlds out there. And I always say you just pull off the electricity and there's no world out there. There's still this online, offline. But there are anthropologists who say like you literally can only do research in that world itself to make sense. So you go into the metaverse, you buy your own VR glasses, your Oculus, and you go there. And there's people like me, a different tribe, who say like, no, you can only make sense if you both go into the metaverse and you walk around, you ask your silly questions, you learn the customs online. You still need to talk to these people like, hey, from where did you get the money for your Oculus glasses? How long a day are you wearing those? What are the after effects, side effects, not in your daily life? But I would say the same good old anthropological method would work here, as I was trying to depict. Can you use anthropological theory? Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of things that anthropologists have been saying about social relations perfectly work out, of course, in the virtual as well. But there's also older theories, not like anthropologists, just to give you an example, like to talk about the gifts. And this is the work by Emil Durkheim, who is an anthropologist, sociologist, talking about the gifts. That if you give a present to someone, I give a present to you, you owe me. Because I have given you a present, so there's some feeling that at a certain stage you have to give me back. Now, if you were to translate this to the digital realm, it's very interesting that if, for example, I'm on Facebook or on Instagram and I like you, I give you a like, I give you a comment, you owe me. I expect that in the long run, after some time, you also are going to like my posts. Now, you can still approach it with anthropological theory, I would say. And this is just giving you one example. But again, it's not all that different. There's a whole lot of theory there. And that's not only in anthropology, that is in media studies, communication studies, religious studies, sociology, that we shouldn't be forgetting. And just because it's new doesn't mean that we can approach it with our good old theories. Let's not forget those, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any question?
Can I just sit? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Wait. Yeah, my name is Putut Wijanarko. I'm from Universitas Paramadina, Jakarta. So, I have two questions actually. First for Pak Bart, especially about the terminology, right? You said conceptually digital ethnography, but I think, when I listening to you, I was listening to you, I then differentiate between several other concepts. Media ethnography, digital ethnography, virtual ethnography, or ethnography. Because I think most people now, when they say digital ethnography, what they have in mind, basically, doing research on the internet or social media itself, forgetting the, you said, offline part, right? So I think we have to differentiate between, people can say, can do participant observation online only, and it's called ethnography or virtual ethnography. And then, like you, doing digital ethnography, basically combine offline and online, but on digital technology, whether they consume or produce contents on using digital technologies. And the other thing is media ethnography. Basically, how people use media, not only digital, on their daily lives, expressing the identity, producing content, whatever. But basically, it's not only digital. The reason why I differentiate, because when I did my PhD research, I was doing some kind of media ethnography on Indonesians Muslim diaspora in New York City. So basically I justify my methodology by, it's not my concept of course, but by proposing media ethnography instead of digital ethnography. So this basically my first, because I'm interested in writing some kind of media ethnography book. I have written on media ethnography on diasporic situations, and I want to share with you and see what you say about it. And one thing, of course, there are so many problems here. In digital ethnography, not problems, but aspects like sites. You mentioned about the problem of site or field. When I did my research, I used multi-sited ethnography. Marcus's multi-sited ethnography, things like that concept. The purity of field and things like that. But the other thing that I want to know as well, basically, you said participant observation is very important in ethnography. I agree with that. But then people very frequently, when they do, like for example, analyzing social media, and they basically capture what let's say the influencers has posted many years ago, and then they capture it, and they said this is virtual ethnography, right? What actually he did, like what Pan said, Gary Pan said, you capture a lot of things in the past, so it's basically archive, right? Like Jerry Pan said that I didn't do digital ethnography, I did archive or document, right? By capturing all the things, and then after that, so I want to know about that. My what you call it, like conclusion, whether it's quite, whether it is valid or not. My second question is about things that both of you mentioned about ethical challenges, right? Ethical challenges or ethical considerations. You mentioned that, but I want to know how you handle that. Like for example, in your books and your research, when you quote influencers, because when you write an article or book, you have to put evidence, right? And then you probably screenshot of the posting or whatever. How did you cite it? So then people can recheck it. The other thing is, isn't that actually, you have mentioned as well, it's a public already, and then as long as it can be considered as fair use, because we don't, like when we
write it for scientific journal, for example, we actually don't get any commercial advantage from putting that pictures on that. So can it be considered as fair use? In copyright, there is a concept called fair use, right? So it's not something that we can have, commercial advantages from putting that particular postings or pictures, whatever, in our, unless in our books probably, because books we have royalties. Thank you.
Yeah. You want to say something? Okay, yeah, please go ahead. Okay, so very briefly on the last question first, not about quoting your informants and what if they are like influencers that are probably very well known. And that's the case, like sometimes you're going to anonymize your data and everyone will recognize, like, oh, it's this person, Dian Pelangi, how can you anonymize her? Not everyone will recognize. And that's why we stress so much this idea of informed consent. Kita tanya lebih dahulu. We ask people, if we interview them, can we use your name or you would prefer an anonymous name? I know here in Indonesia some people are even very upset if I don't quote them literally. I don't quote their names. They say like, hey, you've been talking to me for 1.5 hours and now you say person A, whereas I want to be quoted. But the whole bottom line is like, do these people agree to be mentioned by their names? The second consideration though, like, do we think that it can be harmful for them? Pak Gary was giving the example of working on jihad online. Some people, probably you think it's better for them if you don't mention them by name. And that's a very difficult consideration. It seems a bit paternalistic that I decide if it's safe or unsafe for them. But yeah, that's ethics. There is no right and wrong. You always need to balance there, I would say. The other question about should we call it digital ethnography or nethnography or virtual methods, I care less, I have to say. I'm calling it digital ethnography, but I have a bias. I'm an anthropologist. And anthropologists do ethnography. That's what we are known for. So what's in a name? That would be my short answer. At the same time, there are slight nuances. Not like if you say nethnography, it's mostly people who are focusing on the products, the websites, not what happens behind the screen, the political economy of all of it, the social relations that are being made, which is a slightly different focus. Virtual methods I've never liked because it seems to suggest that it's virtual, it's not real. You have the real world and you have the virtual world, but again, both worlds are real. But that's a slight preference. It may be good to mention that these things are fashions. Each discipline has its own approach as well. At the same time, there is a difference in the sense that I would say ethnography, why I like the term, because it builds upon a longer history of what anthropologists already have been doing. And that's the whole point that I want to show to my students. Like, look, this is nothing new. The digital may be new, but we have our old theories, as was being asked. We have our old methods that still can be put to use. And there's a difference there that anthropologists in the past also like to talk about armchair anthropology. And Malinowski, the picture that I showed of the white guy sitting with the native people, that was quite unique because he moved out in the field himself. And up to then, people had just been sitting in the armchairs and sending letters to faraway places like, please can you collect data for me? Anthropologists have been doing long-distance ethnography. And for example, in Lebanon, when the war was going on, we couldn't do fieldwork in Lebanon, so we phoned them, or we wrote letters, or later an email. But digital ethnography in that sense is different because we both do that and we go there, we go to the place. So I do care still, there's nuances, but I do care about the terminology in that sense, for what I need. And maybe other people need other things. Gary.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the ethical side, and I wanted to say that on my personal stuff, in my books, the ethical frameworks are slightly different, because I'm not doing interviews or anything like that, but with the big projects, we have to go these days through lots of different regulations before we can even start our first bit of data collection. So for the projects that I showed you, separate projects, we had to consider European data protection laws, data storage, privacy, university ethics committees, funding board committee regulations, and they all had to go through peer review as well. So all of these processes are very stringent about where you store your data, how you gather your data, what you can and cannot do. We couldn't get social media because of privacy concerns. They wouldn't let us capture social media. It doesn't matter because we've got so much data anyway from websites, but we can talk about social media, we can show screenshots, and we can externally link to it, but we're not allowed to archive it. Because if you're archiving X or Insta or whatever, you're capturing people's personal interactions. And we are prohibited from doing that. We can't even, I've just taken a photograph of this audience. I can't post that on a website for data protection reasons. The rules are much stricter here.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So we have to be really conscious of that, and we have to build that, and you have to integrate that into any project that you do, almost from day one. You have to start with the ethics and then work out from there. Sorry, it's just brief.
No.
Yeah.
Good addition. At the same time, for example, like me as a Dutch anthropologist doing research here in Indonesia, I need to do ethical clearance with BRIN. And so there's another ethical procedure again, which is probably less tight, but there is one.
We have two last questions. Is that okay? One is from Aga and another one is from me. Yeah.
You're opportunistic here.
Aga.
Thank you, Kang Ade. I'm Aga from Digital Muslim Review. Pak Bart and Pak Gary, we just had master class at IIIU and then also a program here, but I still have a question still lingers on my mind about how do you make sense big data on your research. As you know, I do research on social media and like top figures like Dian Pelangi, as you mentioned, and she has like a lot of Instagram posts, thousands. And initially what I did is I asked, or I did interview with her and then asked how, what messages do you express on your Instagram to make sense her thousands Instagram posts. But I'm not satisfied with their questions, and what I'm doing now is to visualize the Instagram post into word cloud that I presented at IIIU. I just want to know your ways in analyzing this big data, Prof. Bart and Prof. Gary, especially Prof. Gary, because you did archiving this a lot. I believe it has a lot of data, right, on Islamic websites. Yeah, if you could please share your ways with us, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pak Aga. And the last question is from me. The question is for Professor Gary. Could you please clarify the term Islamic algorithms? It is linguistically correct. Because for instance, at Leiden University, people began to change from Islamic studies to Islam studies. Because when we say Islamic, then it is like we based the research on Islamic values. Thank you.
Now maybe because I have to think much shorter about the second question, which was to Pak Gary, I realized, but let me answer it as an anthropologist. Like Islamic algorithms, we have the same thing. I'm doing this big project on Islam and AI, and we interview people on like what is Islamic about AI. And of course there is no definition. And there will be 1,000 definitions and there's none. Because there is as yet not a AI which is Islamic. But I'm very interested in why some people would call AI Islamic, or why they would turn to al-Khwarizmi if you're talking about an algorithm. And so how people perceive why it can be Islamic, and there's Islamic ethics to it. But that's as an anthropologist. I'm interested in subjectivities. And Gary, what would you answer?
I'll do the Islamic algorithms question first. There's no one definition. It's an umbrella term. it's a term to try and start a conversation. It's quite ambiguous. It might mean different things to different people. I just wanted to give that sense of the data equations that were leading people from their search engine or from ChatGPT or OpenAI to a specific piece of knowledge or information. What's driving that? Where is that information being scraped from? I'm not suggesting there's a singularity in terms of an Islamic algorithm. It could mean multiple things. It's like you can't have a single definition of Islam. You can have multiple definitions depending on where you're coming from and what your perspective is, not just as a researcher but as individuals. You know, so there's no one single definition. So really it's a term to sort of try and explore and unpack these different drivers towards religious authority and knowledge online. And yeah, just trying to understand that a little bit more. Hope that answers that one a bit. You can
buy the book.
Have a look at the book. You're welcome to have a look at the end, by the way, if you want. The other thing about the big data, we're still working on that area of the projects at the moment. We're doing some, because we had to spend a lot of time setting up the project and then gathering the data and working out what to include and exclude to get the false positives out, work on the robots, the things that were blocking us. When we were archiving websites, we found when we had to do something called a test crawl. For each website we had to do a test crawl, and sometimes we found that you'd end up with 20 gigabytes of sermons, and that was too much to analyze, really, video sermons or audio sermons. And then we looked at the statistics and we saw that only 5 people had looked at this sermon and so on. So we decided to exclude the content that people weren't really interested in because we only had a finite amount of data storage available. What we're doing now is, now that we've got our archive, it's not finished, but we have work in progress and we're continuing to crawl and obtain new data. We're using data visualization, and we've got a whole package that we're using, and this was discussed at the workshop, well, other people were doing it last week. So we're using different ways to map the relationships between different websites and entities. There's actually an article on the Digital British Islam website that we've written specifically about the methodology. So if you want to take a look, I can point you towards it. It's at an early stage. We're contributing, not just, we've got 2 books coming out on these subjects, but we're also contributing to a new book on digital methodologies in religious studies that one of my colleagues has edited a previous edition. We're doing a new one now. So methodology is very important to us. Okay, but I can talk to you some more about it later. Yeah, hope that answer worked.
It brings up new questions though, and I will stop on that. No? But like the very interesting question, like in Gary's project, we have this project on One Among the Zeros on AI in Southeast Asia. We have collected a fair bit of big data, you could say, like 65 million tweets. We have been data mining 60 plus journals. We have like millions of TikToks. And the whole idea when we first submitted it to the funding agency was that we said that they want to have open and fair data that's accessible to everyone. That we were going to do this analysis and then had a data set and would put it online. Yeah, but as Gary rightfully is saying so, we can't do, because officially we don't own that data. It's being shared by users, it's shared by big platforms. It will be against some of the lighter user agreements, I guess, as well. So that's a problem that only emerges now. What are you going to do with the data set afterwards? Are you going to use it, throw it away, shred it? Or indeed, as we had hoped, share it with the outside world? Because this is big, important data, I would say. But that's for the future.
And you also have to think about what if you lose your data physically, if it's on a drive and somebody else gets hold of it, or somebody hacks your system, you have to have it completely secure.
We are responsible.
Yeah, you are responsible. I never travel with data outside of the UK because I'm always worried I'm going to lose it or get hacked. So I travel with a clean device to make sure nobody can get hold of my data.
Don't hack us.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Bart and also Professor Gary, for the presentations. Thanks also goes to the audience who has asked interesting questions. Please give an applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Arif, for moderating.
Yeah.
Okay, one more time, I want to thank to the speakers and moderators. This is interesting and crucial material will be given. Okay, so now we're going to the last agenda. For the last agenda is closings. So for close our agenda, please reciting Hamdalah together. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thank you for all of our audience, and sorry if I make a mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Sami. It was perfect. It was an intense meeting, but nice questions.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'll try and get them to do some work.
Yeah. Thanks so much, for coming.
Of course, I have a paper from my sociology. I wish you sign to my paper because my lecturer didn't want to sign my paper. I wish you want to do that for me.
Yeah, but I can't sign it if I'm not your teacher. Then I have to read it first.
Of course.
Can I bring it and read it? Yeah?
This paper is talk about habits of labor because labor is how much work it's our pay. Also,
You look like you know what to do with the camera. Could you take a photograph of me up here?
Yeah, but it's okay. Saya bisa baca. Nggak apa-apa.
Ya, alhamdulillah.
Tapi boleh dibawa atau dikirim nanti, kan?
Of course, just if you have the email, so I can.
I give you an email, so you send it.